I'm Kobe Ganton. I was 37 years old when I died, and I remember the exact second I realized I wasn't supposed to come back. It wasn't peaceful. It wasn't bright. It felt like being caught doing something you didn't know was wrong until it was too late. One moment I was breathing, and the next there was a hard stop, like a switch thrown somewhere deep inside me. No pain at first, just a sudden, heavy silence. I remember thinking, very clearly, this is it, and then being shocked by how calm that thought felt. My chest wasn't moving. I couldn't feel my hands. But my mind was still sharp. Too sharp. I noticed details that didn't matter anymore, like the hum of electricity in the walls and the way time seemed to stretch, thin and uneven. I knew I was dying before anyone else in the room did. And the strange part is, I wasn't afraid of being dead. I was afraid of what came after, because in that moment, I understood that almost everything I believed about heaven was wrong. Before that night, my life was normal in the most boring way. I worked as a building inspector in a mid-sized city. Married. One kid. Mortgage. Routine. I wasn't especially religious, but I wasn't hostile to it either. I grew up with the usual ideas. Be decent. Don't hurt people. Heaven is a place where things finally make sense. I pictured it like most people do, even if I never said it out loud. Safe. Calm. A kind of reward for surviving life without messing up too badly. I didn't think about death much. I was healthy enough, busy enough, distracted enough. My days were filled with checklists, traffic, small arguments, small wins. I believed that if something went wrong, there would be warning signs. Pain, fear, a moment to prepare. Looking back, that belief feels naive. Life didn't slow down to let me catch up. It just kept going, right up to the moment it stopped. The night it happened was ordinary. That's what still bothers me. No storm. No dramatic build-up. I had stayed late at the office finishing reports, then drove home tired and irritated about nothing in particular. At home, I remember standing in the kitchen, reheating leftovers, scrolling through my phone. My wife was already asleep. I felt a tightness in my chest, sharp enough to notice, but not sharp enough to panic. I told myself it was stress. Then my vision narrowed, like someone slowly closing curtains from the sides. The floor came up fast. I remember the sound of the plate shattering, and then I was on my back, staring at the ceiling fan as it blurred into a spinning smear. Breathing became work. Real work. Each breath felt borrowed. Then even that effort slipped away. There was a moment, brief but unmistakable, when my body gave up without asking me. And in that moment, I understood that control was an illusion I'd carried my whole life without questioning. I didn't feel myself leave my body. There was no motion, no floating upward like people describe. One moment I was struggling to breathe, and the next I was watching myself from a place that didn't feel like anywhere. My body looked wrong, not injured, just empty, like a shell that had already been decided about. I could see my chest still, my mouth slightly open. The ceiling fan kept spinning, steady and indifferent. I noticed small things with strange clarity. A crack in the paint, a drop of sauce on the counter, my phone buzzing with a notification I would never read. I tried to move my hand and nothing happened, not because I couldn't, but because the idea of hand no longer applied to me. I wasn't afraid yet. I was confused. I kept waiting for pain or darkness or something familiar to anchor me. Instead, there was distance. Not physical distance, but separation. Like watching your life through glass you can't touch. I understood, without anyone telling me, that whatever I was now, it didn't belong to that body anymore. The space around me shifted without changing. That's the only way I can explain it. The kitchen was still there, but it felt thin, like a picture stretched too far. Then it wasn't there at all. I wasn't falling. I wasn't moving. The scene simply gave way to something else. I stood, or existed, in a wide open place that felt contained, like the inside of a massive room with no walls. The light was even and soft, not bright, not dark. It didn't come from anywhere specific. It just was. And I wasn't alone. There was a presence ahead of me. Not a shape at first. Just awareness. Focused. Intentional. It felt like being fully seen without being examined. I knew this wasn't something I could hide from. The presence didn't speak right away, but I understood that it knew me better than I knew myself. Not my resume. Not my intentions. The actual truth of me. That realization brought the first real fear. Not panic. Something quieter. The fear of being known without excuses. When the presence finally spoke, it wasn't with sound. The understanding arrived whole, like a thought that wasn't mine. I expected judgment. What I got was correction. Not anger. Not comfort. Just clarity. I realized that the picture of heaven I carried my entire life was built on safety and distance. A place where nothing is demanded anymore. Where effort ends. That idea dissolved immediately. What I was facing wasn't about reward. It was about alignment. About what I had become versus what I was meant to become. The presence showed me moments from my life, not the obvious ones. Not crimes or kindnesses. Small choices. Things I dismissed as harmless. Times I chose comfort over honesty. Silence over courage. Convenience over care. None of it was dramatic. That was the point. I understood then that heaven isn't entered by being good enough. That belief was shallow. Heaven was closer to truth than comfort, and I wasn't as prepared for that as I thought. The realization didn't crush me, but it stripped something away, and I knew there was more to see. The presence led me forward without moving. The open space narrowed into something like a path, though there was no ground under me. On either side, scenes appeared, clear and contained, like windows suspended in the air. Each one showed a version of a life that looked familiar. Too familiar. I saw people who believed they were safe because they had checked the right boxes. Kind people. Polite people. People who never caused trouble. They stood in bright, calm spaces that looked peaceful at first glance. But when I focused, I saw that nothing changed there. No growth. No movement. Just stillness that slowly turned heavy. The presence let me understand what I was seeing without explanation. These were lives built around avoiding harm instead of choosing truth. They weren't punished. They weren't suffering. They were simply finished. And they didn't know it. That scared me more than any image of fire ever could. I realized how often I had confused safety with goodness. How often I had settled for being acceptable instead of being honest. The scene shifted again. I was shown something different this time. A wide field filled with light, warm and alive. People were moving through it, but not drifting. They were engaged, focused. Some looked tired. Some looked joyful. All of them looked awake. The light around them responded to them, changing as they changed. I understood that this place required something from you. Attention, willingness, a kind of openness that couldn't be faked. I felt exposed just looking at it. The presence made it clear that this wasn't about perfection. It was about direction, about whether you were turning toward truth even when it cost you. I saw moments from my own life appear beside the field. Times when I knew what the right thing was and chose the easier thing instead. Not evil choices. Small ones. The kind you justify quickly and forget. Watching them now, I felt the weight of how those moments had shaped me more than the big decisions ever did. Then I was shown something that unsettled me deeply. A vision of false safety. It looked like a comfortable room, warm colors, soft edges. People sat inside, relaxed, smiling, convinced they had arrived. But the longer I watched, the more I saw that the doors were closed. Not locked, just ignored. The people inside weren't trapped. They simply didn't want to leave. Outside the room was the same living light I had seen before, but stepping into it required letting go of the story they told themselves about who they were. I recognized myself there. The version of me that believed being decent was enough. That avoiding conflict was wisdom. That staying quiet was humility. The presence didn't accuse me. It didn't need to. The truth was obvious once it was shown. I understood then that heaven isn't a place you drift into. It's something you move toward, consciously, while you're still alive. And I hadn't been doing that. The next thing I was shown wasn't a place. It was time. Or what time looks like when you're no longer inside it. I saw my life stretched out, not as a timeline, but as a shrinking space. Like a hallway that narrowed the farther it went. I understood immediately that I had always assumed time was generous. That there would be room later to fix things, to speak up, to change direction. The presence showed me how often I had postponed what mattered, telling myself I'd get to it when things calmed down. The truth was uncomfortable. Time wasn't taken from me. I gave it away, moment by moment. The warning wasn't dramatic. No threat, just clarity. I was shown how little space most people actually use before they run out. How quickly routines harden into habits, and habits into identity. The presence let me feel the urgency without panic. A quiet pressure. Like standing on a platform while a train approaches, not fast, but steady. I understood that life isn't long or short. It's precise. You don't get extra time for good intentions. You only get what you actually step into. That knowledge settled heavy in me, because I could see how close I had come to wasting mine without realizing it. The return was abrupt. There was no ceremony. One moment I was still with that understanding, and the next I felt weight again. Crushing, unfamiliar weight. Pain arrived all at once, sharp and disorienting. Sound rushed back in, chaotic and loud. Someone was shouting my name. My chest burned as air forced its way in, like my lungs were learning how to work from scratch. I felt hands on me, pressure, then release. I opened my eyes to a blur of faces and harsh light. Everything felt wrong. Too bright, too loud, too slow. I wanted to tell them I had been somewhere else, that something important had happened, but my mouth wouldn't cooperate. I remember thinking, with strange disappointment, that I was back, that whatever choice I had been facing wasn't finished. Later, in the hospital, doctors told me I'd been gone for a few minutes. They said I was lucky. That word didn't fit. I wasn't lucky. I was warned. I'm telling you this because I don't have a better ending. I didn't come back with answers that make life easier. I came back with a question that doesn't leave me alone. What are you moving toward, really? Not what you believe in, not what you approve of, what your daily choices are shaping you into. Heaven, if that word means anything, isn't a place you qualify for at the end. It's a direction you choose now, in small, uncomfortable ways. You don't need to be dramatic. You don't need to be perfect, but you do need to be honest, especially with yourself. Don't confuse comfort with safety. Don't assume silence is neutral. And don't believe you have more time than you do. I didn't. And I almost didn't get another chance.